Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the June 13th meeting of the La Crosse Common Council. I note that all council members are present. For those who are able, please join me in standing for the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by our invocation. And tonight's invocation is from Pastor John Parkin from St. John's United Church of Christ.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to be here, and having served on a city council, a county board, and La Crosse School Board, I know what you go through. Let us pray. Our God, help us as we contemplate the needs of the people of La Crosse. Ever remind us of the need for justice in our actions. Bless this democracy and our freedom to choose. Grant us the grace to do that which is best for all. And may we always remember those who gave their lives or their health in the service of our free country. Amen.
Thank you. We move on to our agenda. The first item up is the approval of our minutes from our May 9th regular meeting. And I see a motion has been made by Council Member Weaver, seconded by Council Member Richmond to approve. Any discussion on the minutes from last month? I see no request to speak. Please go ahead and cast your vote. The motion is to approve. The motion carries 13-0. The minutes are approved. We move on to our reports. The first item is 19-0723, a report of the Director of Finance for the month of January 2019. Motion has been made by Councilmember Richmond, seconded by Councilmember Ostrom to receive and file. Any discussion? I see no request to speak on the board. Please go ahead and cast your vote. The motion passes. That report is received and filed. Next item, 19-0724, report of the Director of Finance for the month of February 2019. Motion has been made by Councilmember Richmond, seconded by Councilmember Ostrom to receive and file. Any discussion on this report? I see no request to speak. Please go ahead and cast your vote. That motion carries 13-0. That report is received and filed. Next item, 19-0725, report of the Director of Finance for the month of March 2019. Motion has been made by Councilmember Neumeister, seconded by Councilmember Richmond to receive and file. Any discussion on that report? Seeing no request to speak, go ahead and cast your vote. The vote is 13-0 in favor. That item is received and filed. Next item is 19-0833, report of Fire Department Division of Fire Prevention and Building Safety on inspections and permit revenue for the month of May 2019. Motion has been made by Councilmember Podesky, seconded by Councilmember Ostrom to receive and file. Any discussion on this report? I see no request to speak. Please go ahead and cast your vote. The motion carries by a vote of 13-0. That report is received and filed. Next, we move on to items under notices and discussions. If you have an item that you would like to share, please hit your request to speak button and I will recognize you. Does anyone have an item for notice or discussion for the council tonight? Going once, going twice. Okay, I see there are none. Let's move on then to our common council matters. First item under that is 19-0865, resolution approving engineering estimates for June 2019. Motion has been made by Councilmember Richmond, seconded by Councilmember Ostrom to adopt. Any discussion on the engineering estimates for the month? I see no request to speak. Please go ahead and cast your vote. The motion is to approve. The vote is 13-0 in favor. That motion is adopted and that resolution is approved. We move on to item number 19-0879, a resolution approving the 2019 bills paid in June of 2019. Motion has been made by Councilmember Newmeister, seconded by Councilmember Christians to adopt. Any discussion on the bills this month? I see no request to speak. Please go ahead and cast your vote. The motion passes by a vote of 13-0. Those bills are adopted. We move on to appointments by the mayor. Item 19-0820. We have one appointment this month, and that's to the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee, Grace Jansen. Motion has been made by Council President Gall, seconded by Councilmember Ostrom to confirm. Any discussion on the appointment? I see no request to speak. Please go ahead and cast your vote. The motion carries by a vote of 13-0. That appointment is confirmed. We move on next to suspension of council Rule 8 for the following items, which does require a 2/3 vote. And those are items 19-0760, 0798, 0814, 0815, 0832, 0835, and 0836. A motion has been made by Council President Gall, seconded by Councilmember Menninger to approve the suspension of the rules. Please go ahead and cast your vote. The motion carries by a vote of 13-0. The rule is suspended for those items. We move on to item or for report of bids and quotes recommended to be adopted 19-0548, report of bids and resolution awarding contract to Fowler and Hammer, Inc. in the amount of $216,924.30 for the King Street Neighborhood Greenway Phase 1 project. Motion has been made by Councilmember Weaver, seconded by Councilmember Christians to adopt. Any discussion? I see no request to speak. Please go ahead and cast your vote. The vote is 13-0 in favor. That motion passes and that bid is awarded. Next item, 19-0660, report of bids and resolution awarding contract to Steiger Construction, Inc. in the amount of $97,041.25 for the 2019 Curb and Gutter City Pave Project. Motion has been made by Councilmember Richmond, seconded by Councilmember Ostrom to adopt. Any discussion? I see no request to speak. Please go ahead and cast your vote. Again, the motion is to adopt. The motion carries by a vote of 13-0, and that bid is awarded. Next item, 19-0661, report of bids and resolution awarding contract to Fowler and Hammer, Inc. in the amount of $284,817.06 for the 2019 LRIP Rubley Street project from Liberty to George. And the motion has been made by Councilmember Jansen, seconded by Councilmember Ostrom to adopt. Any discussion? I see no request to speak. Please go ahead and cast your vote. Again, the motion is to adopt. The motion carries by a vote of 13-0. That bid is awarded. Next item, 19-0662, report of bids and resolution awarding contract to Matthew Construction Company in the amount of $1,299,645 for the Diagonal Road Neighborhood Porous Asphalt Paving Phase 2 project. Motion has been made by Councilmember Newmeister, seconded by Councilmember Ostrom to adopt. Any discussion? I see no request to speak. Please go ahead and cast your vote. The motion is to adopt. The motion carries by a vote of 13-0. That bid is awarded. Next item, 19-0704, report of bids and resolution awarding contract to Fowler and Hammer, Inc. in the amount of $63,938.35 for the 2019 RRFB's rebid. Motion has been made by Councilmember Ostrom, seconded by Councilmember Podesky to adopt. Any discussion? I see no request to speak. Please cast your vote. The motion is to adopt. Motion carries by a vote of 13-0. That bid is awarded. We move on next to items recommended to be adopted. First item is 19-0613, resolution confirming the debt structure for the La Crosse Center renovation and remodel. The vote from the Finance and Personnel Committee was to adopt by a vote of 5-1. Motion has been made by Council President Gall, seconded by Councilmember Newmeister to adopt, and I would recognize Council President Gall to speak.
Thank you, Mayor. As everybody has reviewed this, and Mayor, as you know, part of this financing package that has been put together has requested some assistance from some of our regional partners. And I know that request is still forthcoming and under consideration. However, I think it would be wise at this juncture for you, if you would, please, sir, to enlighten us as far as what would happen if they would choose not to participate in this package.
Thank you. Very briefly, the way that the resolution is worded is, in essence, the city levy is going to make up any difference between the amounts that are included in the agenda, or I'm sorry, in the legislation from both the county and Unalaska. So if things do go well and they come through with a part or all of the requests, we should be fine. And if they don't, we're going to look at that each and every year based on our debt payments, and that will determine how much has to come from the tax levy. We estimate that to be right around, $1 million to $1.1 million every year. Any other questions? Okay, I see no other requests to speak. The motion on the floor is to adopt. Please go ahead and cast your vote. The motion carries by a vote of 13-0. That item is adopted. We move on next to item number 19-0684, a resolution approving the application of Western Technical College for a conditional use permit at 528 8th Street North and 714 La Crosse Street, allowing for demolition of a structure to create green space for the campus. The vote out of the Judiciary and Administration Committee was to adopt by a vote of 5-1. A motion has been made by Councilmember Weaver, seconded by Council President Gall to adopt, and I would recognize Councilmember Olson to speak.
Thank you, Mayor. I do have a question for the city planner on this one. In talking to a fellow J&A committee member, it was brought up that these properties owned by Western were already utilized in destructive fire department training. And I guess I wanted to clarify whether or not that was accurate information first, and then I might have a follow-up question.
My understanding is that, yes, Western did coordinate with our fire department, but I don't know the timeline or the status of when they were actually used for training. At the time that we originally got their application and they were deemed to be under review for the conditional use permit for demolition, the outstanding issue was whether or not how the pilot was going to be applied. So even though the city hadn't taken action on them, I think there was some discussion about whether or not they were there was any issue relative to the conditions of approval that we could apply that would prevent them from being demolished, given Act 67 and some of the new guidance that we have on conditional use permits. So my recollection is just that they were, even though we hadn't taken action on them, because it was largely because of the pilot issue.
Thank you. That does help clarify. And I guess my concern at this juncture is, and in my short 2 years on council, I've seen this happen now twice, that we put the cart before the horse and had owners go in and do demolishing activities to a property before clearing a conditional use permit to demolish the property. And I guess my concern is if that's not going to start a trend where we have other property owners that if they want to get basically a free pass to tear down their property, that they do some demolition type activity in there and basically force the hand of this body to give them the permit to tear it down. I guess, do you share that concern, and do you feel a need for legislation to address that?
Yes, thank you, Councilmember Olson. I do share that concern, and I made a public statement at one of our Plan Commission meetings about, demolition by neglect or activities that occur that aren't necessarily permittable or require city involvement in permitting. Like, I think we had one where a contractor came and drilled holes to just explore the structure for hazardous material. And then, once you do that, you're diminishing the value of the structure and making it that much more difficult to rehabilitate. So I do share that concern.
Thank you. Next, I would recognize Councilmember Newmeister.
Thank you, Your Honor. I too, with Councilmember Olson, in the Planning Commission meeting, I expressed my concern over the exact same thing. Well, I will move forward to go forward with these two properties only because I think we all knew they were coming. They have a history of doing this, and I surely don't want this to be the norm. And I think we need to look at some sort of legislation or something to keep this from happening, because we have a loophole there, and they seem to be using it along with others, and it's really takes away any ability we have to move forward on not allowing demolition. They're demoing before permits even filed, before we've even allowed them to do so, and before it's even come in front of any legislative party. So I think we need to look at our options and maybe look at some legislation to curb this and not allow it in the future if at all possible. And this will be my last time that I will vote to allow them to take down a building, especially in the way that this has been handled. Thank you.
Thank you. I would just add one comment in addition to a possible legislative remedy if the council wants to look at that. We do, the other piece of that we discussed briefly at the Plan Commission was a coordination aspect so that the city departments are all together when it comes to training or other types of activities before these CUPs are acted on at any committee level, so that we can make sure that we know if there's something pending to hold off on any type of training or activity until those approvals have been made. So I do think there's probably a legislative piece to this, but I think there's also an administrative or a coordination aspect to this as well. I would recognize next Council Member Kalo.
Thank you. Thanks, Gary. I'm still new at this. Thank you, Mayor Cabot. This is in my district, and I have owned my home in this district since 1990. I was young and 29 back then. I can tell you I have seen dozens and dozens and dozens of houses demolished in this district and others, mostly for surface parking lots. They don't add any tax value. They do nothing for our community. They provide parking for those who come into the city to use our services and then leave. So I will be voting no on this, as I did at the JNA. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak on this item? I see no other requests to speak. The motion on the floor is to adopt. Please cast your vote. The motion carries by a vote of 11 to 2. The two no votes were Council Members Kalo and Happel. So that motion does carry. That permit is granted. Next, we move on to items recommended to be re-referred, and that is item 19-0593, an ordinance to create section 4-20 of the Code of Ordinances of the City of La Crosse to regulate online ordering and curbside pickup of alcohol beverages. The vote out of the Judiciary and Administration Committee was to refer this for 30 days to the July 2019 meetings, and that vote was 5-1. I see a motion has been made by Councilmember Newmeister, seconded by Councilmember Weaver to refer, and I would recognize Councilmember Olson to speak.
Thank you again, Mayor. Excuse me. Smoker's cough. All right. Since I am the sponsor of this legislation, Chief Tischer did reach out to me to sponsor this. I did not actually draft it myself. I was absent from last week's J&A meeting, so I was not present to hear the one person who had registered in opposition to the legislation. And also, since that point in time, the person who had registered has not made any effort to reach out to me by phone or email. And so I'm not quite sure if the referral was meant as a way to put this out in open discussion right now, or because there were specific things that were to be accomplished in the next month, so maybe somebody could enlighten me.
Thank you. Council President Gall is next to speak. Are you going to enlighten us? All right. I would recognize Council President Gall.
Thank you. What we've found during the course of the discussion of this at J&A was it actually created more questions than answers. And in fact, we did have one individual here who was registered to speak and was actually registered in favor. But because of not having a full understanding of what was in front of us, they ended up actually in opposition because nobody really understood what exactly it was we were looking at. Some of the members of the J&A committee had some concerns with the language and wanted to, I thought, I'm the one who made the motion to refer, and I thought it was wise for us to step back for 30 days and take a good hard look at the language, whether that was from the public taking a look at what we were voting on or members of the committee or the council themselves to take a good look at this to make sure we wanted to move forward with it in its present in the form that it was in, because if there were any tweaks or changes that we wanted to make, now was the time to make them. But I thought it was very important that the public understood what it was we were voting for, and thus the recommendation to refer.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak on this item? Again, the motion is to re-refer. I don't see any other requests to speak, so please go ahead and cast your vote. The motion passes by a vote of 13-0. That item is referred to the July Council of Meetings. We are to the consent agenda. If you have an item that you would like held out for a separate vote, please hit your request to speak button so that I can recognize you, and we will take that item up. I would recognize Councilmember Jansen.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to hold out 19-0447.
Okay, 19-0447, an amended ordinance to amend Section 42-47 of the Code of Ordinances of the City of La Crosse regarding room tax. And I see a motion has been made to adopt by Council President Gall, seconded by Councilmember Menninger. Any discussion on this item? I would recognize Councilmember Jansen to speak.
Thank you, Mayor. I understand we need to do something with the room tax. I believe, though, that all the letters that were attached to Legistar, as well as the emails we received, had some valid arguments. And I believe still that if we left the room tax at 8 or 9%, we would probably bring in more revenue than if we raise it to 9.5%. That's just my best educated conclusion. And I understand why so many people are interested in raising it. I just want to let you know that I do have concerns about that. And I see this as a moving possibility that in a year, depending on the results, we may want to revisit this.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak on this item? I would recognize Councilmember Neumeister.
Thank you, Mayor. I too had some hesitation on this, but I also believe that that's exactly what we can do. I think we can look at it in a year, revisit it, adjust if needed, but we have to do something. And, our big concern was, and along with, Explore La Crosse and downtown Main Street and everyone else, that we do not hit the double digits. And I think we have obviously achieved that with 9.5. I mean, obviously we come close, but we're not there. And I think it's a big thing as long as we didn't hit that 10%. And at this point, I'm in favor of it, but I'm also in favor of looking at it every year, as we move forward and seeing if it needs to be adjusted. I mean, the last thing we want to do is lose business because of it. But again, I rent a lot of hotel rooms. I've never ever looked at it. I do understand that if I have a big convention or something, I may look at it, but I believe keeping it under that double digit is the happy spot, hopefully. And I think we should just move forward and move on and take a look at it. Like Councilmember Jansen said, I think that's a great idea. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak on this item? I would recognize Councilmember Olson.
Thank you, Mayor. I've given this a lot of reflection. I've had opportunity to read a lot of the letters and emails from folks on this issue. I guess where I draw concern is this tax is going to hit everybody within city limits, whether or not they enjoy any of the benefit that the La Crosse Center is going to bring in terms of their direct business activity. If this tax could be applied in a way that it only affects the hotels, the lodging establishments within about a 3-block radius of the La Crosse Center, full steam ahead. That's totally fair. That makes sense. But I think you have some innocent, hardworking business owners out there. I can't even name them because I don't know them. They haven't been lobbying me, so I can't remember any off the top of my head. But just generically over the last 3-4 months, I do remember people reaching out and saying that this was going to be tough for them to bear because they weren't going to see the return on it. And so I think I can't support it at this point. And I hope I'm wrong, and I hope nobody goes out of business or has to close their bed and breakfast or any of that, because those things are very valuable to the community, and people work very hard and take huge risks to establish those places. So I will be joining my colleague, Councilmember Jansen, in opposition this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I'd recognize Council President Gall.
Thank you. I'm going to urge everybody who is not opposed to this in some fashion, and I don't want to cast any dispersion towards council members Olson or Jansen on this, because this is a hard issue. But at the same token, I want to remind everyone that the resolution that's under consideration, that was amended and is on the floor tonight, was a compromise from the position that we had originally thought we were going to be taking, and it's a compromise that not only lowered the rate to the 9.5% under consideration, but also sunsetted the rate for the over a 20-year period, which is what we are assuming will be the requirement to fulfill the debt obligations. I want to remind everyone also that the business community, the Convention Visitors Bureau, they are in support of this. I think in an ideal world, none of us would have liked to have had to do this, but reality says that we have got to look at the resources that we have available to us to structure a debt package to enable us to do what's right for the city, and there's no doubt, there's no question that what we are doing at the La Crosse Center is the right thing for us to do for the city, and I believe it'll benefit everyone, not only within the city, but within the region. This is a regional benefit. I hope that our regional partners can see that and understand that, but in this juncture, we need to move forward with the financing and use whatever tools that we have in the city's toolbox, and this is an important one that I would urge you to support and to capitalize on the goodwill and the support of the business community in recognizing that we need this to move forward, and I would ask for your vote in favor.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak? I would recognize Councilmember Olson.
Thank you, Mayor. In mentioning that, very well spoken, Council President Gall. You're definitely the voice of reason among us in many of these matters, and I have a lot of respect for you, even though we differ on this one. But yeah, thanks, Gary. In what you just mentioned about the Convention Visitors Bureau throwing their support behind the 9.5%, and you said that part of the negotiation process was the 20-year sunset clause. and it harkens back to the email that was sent by the director of the LCCVB with several conditions upon which they would be supporting it. I guess, has there been further agreements made outside of what's being committed within this legislation that maybe should be shared with the council before proceeding on this vote?
Well, I can tell you that we continue to have conversations about the issues that were raised, including the lease payment that the CVB makes for their for the property that the city owns, as well as a long-term plan for that building. And we have had conversations about a renovation plan for that. We have general estimates, and you will be seeing that come through the capital budget process to start working on that building, but there are no guarantees.
That's exactly what I was asking for, if there was any commitments made outside of a 20-year sunset clause.
No, because this council makes the commitments through the capital budget process, so you will see that.
Thank you.
Any other questions or discussion? I see no other requests to speak. The motion on the floor is to adopt. Please go ahead and cast your vote. Motion carries by a vote of 11-2. The 2 no votes were council members Olson and Jansen. So that measure does carry. That is adopted. I go back to the consent agenda. Anyone wishing to hold out an item for a separate vote, please hit your request to speak button and I will recognize you. I heard a motion by Councilmember Richmond, seconded by Councilmember Olson to move the consent agenda. All of those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed, say no. Motion carries. I entertain a motion to adjourn. I heard a motion by Councilmember Weaver, seconded by Councilmember Podesky to adjourn. All in favor? We are adjourned. Thank you all and have a great rest of your night.